Finally, it has happened. I'm not saying do, Max Verstappen. Lando Norris is a Formula 1 winner. Welcome to the Fitz podcast. It's another edition. I'm Eoghain Fitzgerald. Formula 1 fans, you are welcome. And wow, Lando Norris finally gets that win. You know, he was so close in Russia. He's been on the podium many times, finishing second for McLaren. And finally, we are here. He can call himself a race winner. And lots of people predicting that 2024, we would see Lando Norris on the top step. And he didn't want to have that statistic, did he? He didn't want to have a statistic of the most races entered and, you know, not winning a race. I said Nico Hülkenberg hates the fact he hasn't finished on the podium. Lando Norris has that off his chest. Now he can concentrate on being a multiple Grand Prix winner. And, of course, hopefully in the future as well, fighting for a World Championship. But McLaren were absolutely delighted. McLaren bought some new parts. They brought an upgrade to the car, and it worked. Now Lando got the full package, where Oscar didn't get as much. He will have it for the next Grand Prix out in Imola. Lando Norris was kind of hoping his first Formula 1 win would be in his home race in Silverstone, but he's got it in Miami. We were back-to-back sprint weekends, and finally, the format, the sprint weekend, really worked the weekend just gone in Miami. We had practice one. The red flag came out early as Charles Leclerc spun his car, blocked the track, did a bit of Austin Powers back and forth, but eventually the car just stalled and he couldn't get it going with the clutch, and he had to retire from FP1. Difficult session to retire from because you're straight into the sprint weekend, sprint race qualifying. But he still managed to put it on the front row alongside Max Verstappen. So a bit of a mixed bag for the first session. Then we went into qualifying, where the McLarens looked very strong, didn't they? Even without the full package, Oscar Piastri was looking good. Lando Norris was looking good to fight for pole position or maybe be at the front. But they had to put the soft tyres on. Everyone had to run the soft tyre in SQ3, and it just didn't benefit McLaren at all. We headed into the sprint race, and it wasn't long until Lando Norris had retired on the first lap after about a corner or two. Lewis Hamilton decided to throw his car in there like there was no tomorrow. I think they called it someone said it was like the torpedo a few years ago. Kvyat against Sebastian Vettel. Lewis Hamilton causing a bit of kerfuffle with Alonso, and then with Stroll, and then with Lando Norris as well. But little did we know Lando Norris would be celebrating his first win. So it was an easy enough win with Max ahead of Charles in the sprint race, but there was no point at the weekend where Max was ever really far in front. You know, even when Max got his pole position for the race, he said lol, because he said he put a really bad lap together. And where was everyone? And he just didn't really seem to have the pace this weekend to do the usual, I'm going ahead 15, 20, 30 seconds ahead of everyone. So there's certain tracks maybe we're finding out this year that's not going to suit Max Verstappen and not going to suit Red Bull as well. Now, the last time Max Verstappen retired from a race this year or didn't finish first was the Australian Grand Prix. He retired, he didn't finish it. So maybe we're just finding there's the odd weekend. Red Bull aren't going to do the whole dominant thing where they're going to win every race of the season, but we can guarantee that he's going to win the majority of 80 to 90% of the Grand Prix. But it just gives us a bit of hope heading into the championship and heading into Imola next. And I think Imola, a race where Lando Norris has done pretty well in the past. He's been good in qualifying. He's found himself on the podium there a few times. We didn't have the race, obviously, due to the disaster with the weather and the flooding that happened last year. But thankfully, we'll have more of a safer Grand Prix, fingers crossed, this weekend. But Lando Norris seems to go very well. He's got tracks like in Austria and in Imola as well, where he does pretty well. And I think the British crowd will be really excited. Is it too early to start talking about a fight for the championship? Max Verstappen isn't miles ahead. If McLaren were to bring out a car that was winning every weekend, they wouldn't be long fighting him for the championship. Maybe we're getting a bit excited. Of course, Max Verstappen would have had some floor damage from running over the curb and that cone as well, which I think the cone should have got driver of the day. And we could get into the whole discussion of why it took them so long to even take out a yellow flag and even to go to virtual safety car. They seem to, look, I don't know, I'm no expert, but when we seem to have the camera angles, we seem to be thinking, why isn't there a double yellow flag? This could go anywhere. It could flip over and hit a driver in the head. I know we've got the halo. It could get stuck in someone's car. It could ruin the race. It could be very dangerous for the marshals. I don't think there was much of a crowd there, and where the cone is, well, it probably is behind the barrier, general admission or something. So I was very surprised how long it took them. But then again, the FIA have the data, they have the camera angles, and they eventually sorted it out. And fair play to that marshal who had that gap on the track to come back out. But it just shows that Max Verstappen isn't bulletproof, and there's going to be weekends where he makes mistakes, and he just wasn't fully comfortable in the Red Bull car. And of course we had the big news that Adrian Newey is leaving as well, so it was the first race back since that news had broke. So, you know, is there a bit of inconsistency in Red Bull? I don't think so. I just think he's not going to win every single race. You know, Max Verstappen, we know how much on form he is, but he's not going to deliver that every weekend. Himself in the car have to be at one every weekend, and that is quite difficult. You know, we haven't seen Perez pick up the pieces the weekends that he hasn't finished, and obviously Ferrari will be disappointed as well. So 1 hour, 30 minutes, 25 points goes to Lando Norris in the McLaren, driver number 4. He was so happy. It was so emotional. And it was great to see because everyone was really happy that Lando Norris had won a race. Normally people are disappointed for their rivals, but like everyone was so happy. Just for him to get that away from him, all the disappointment he's had, for Lando Norris to finish on the top step. And fingers crossed, we will see Lando Norris more wins in 2024. But look, at least he's got that under his belt. He'll be absolutely delighted. Max Verstappen, 18 points, finished in second place, 7.612. Once Lando Norris kind of got out there, he was very comfortable in the lead. Lots of people say he got lucky with the safety car, but that's Formula 1. How many times have we seen Lewis Hamilton when he was leading, and Max Verstappen as well in recent races, being at the front, and when the safety car comes out, you get that cheeky pit stop, you get that cheeky gap, and that happened for Lando Norris, although the safety car, he did get a bit lost and he nearly ended a lap ahead, so thankfully the safety car was able to pick him up. But Max Verstappen had such a funny thing. He was like, what did he say? He goes, it happens. He was like, you know, safety car comes out, someone gets luck. If my mum had balls, she'd be my dad. You have to like the humour of Max Verstappen. He finished in second. Charles Leclerc in third. And after a difficult start to the weekend and missing out in the first session, Ferrari had a good weekend, I think, with Charles. Maybe should have picked up some of the points that maybe Lando Norris got. They'll be disappointed not to have won the race. Sergio Perez in fourth, kind of suited him at the end with the tyres, and the safety car kind of helped him, but he torpedoed into the first corner, didn't he? It was kind of looking like maybe we could have got a comfortable 1-2 for Red Bull, you know, Perez coming through the field, but yeah, that didn't help him at all, and he nearly took out Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen's face in the press conference afterwards, or the driver's room afterwards, was absolutely hilarious. But yeah, very close to Sergio Perez taking out both him and Max Verstappen, and possibly a few Ferraris as well. Carlos Sainz will be disappointed. Not a great race for him in 5th place. He was 16 seconds off the pace, and he had lots of battles, didn't he, with Oscar Piastri as well, which didn't end up too well for Oscar. Lots of hard racing this weekend. 6th place goes to Lewis Hamilton, 16 seconds off and 8 points. He'll be happy with that because they've had a bad weekend, and Mercedes just don't know what car they're going to get session to session. So he had a good race and he's fought his way through the field. Safety car obviously would have helped as well, but Lewis Hamilton, it's the best he could have got. 6th is the best position, dependent on the track, but at the moment for Mercedes, and Lewis says he still loves Mercedes, he's still fighting for Mercedes. There's nothing he can do about Ferrari yet. So look, good pace from Hamilton, if you call it good pace. It was the best he could get out of the car. Yuki Tsunoda, great points for him, 6 points in 7th place. Yuki's having a great year. I know he's had a bit of bad luck, but a great year so far for Yuki Tsunoda. Daniel Ricciardo had a fantastic sprint race, finishing in 4th place, and he said, I miss being at the front. But had a difficult qualifying and then a difficult race as well. So Yuki Tsunoda picking up the points, he'll be delighted. In 7th, George Russell off the pace this weekend, 8th place for Mercedes. Fernando Alonso in 9th place for Aston Martin, and Ocon gets his first point and Alpine's first point of the season. Don't be fooled. Like, to see them celebrating getting 1 point is absolutely ridiculous for a team like Alpine in the history with Renault and Benetton before them. But look, they'll be delighted to get into the points after the first opening Grand Prix where they haven't scored any. Esteban Ocon for France getting his 1 point, and look, at least it's Alpine off the mark. Hopefully this will give them some motivation and possibly some upgrades to come in that car. Nico Hülkenberg in 11th place. He'll be disappointed not to get more points for Haas, but he was the leading driver this weekend. Got points, of course, in the sprint race, but Kevin Magnussen just having an absolutely awful weekend, which we'll get into, but also being the ultimate team player as well. Pierre Gasly in 12th, he's very disappointed. Have a listen to his interviews afterwards. He is so disappointed that he didn't finish in the points, and pretty much the safety car kind of ruined his weekend, but Gasly was on for a good result, 44 seconds off the pace. 13th for Oscar Piastri, got in, you know, pretty well at the start, made a good start with Perez lunging down, got ahead of the Ferraris, and then he was kind of holding that pace, and you were kind of thinking if the safety car came out at the right time we could have seen Oscar leading, and then he just got in a bit of a confuffle with Carlos Sainz, and it just got a bit too much, bit of damage for him, wearing his tyres, had to make a pit stop. if he had more laps, he probably would have made his way through the field, but he'd be very disappointed. But he will be celebrating the win for McLaren. He'll always have that he got something before Lando Norris with the sprint race in Qatar, won't he? But he'll be disappointed with 13th place, but no doubt he can bounce back, because I think before that he kind of had a good solid weekend. So we'll see how he goes in Imola for Oscar Piastri. Zhou Guanyu in 14th for Kick Sauber. Daniel Ricciardo will be very disappointed, 15th place after his 4th place in the sprint race. Qualifying just didn't go his way, the race didn't go his way, but Daniel has shown that, when things are right, he can get there, and we know that from Daniel Ricciardo. So he'll be happy with the sprint race, but very disappointed with the race. Valtteri Bottas in 16th. Not much you can say about Sauber. Of course, Sauber and Audi have signed Nico Hülkenberg. He is making a move there for 2025 and Audi into the future as well. 17th place for Lance Stroll, 55 seconds off the pace. Bad weekend for Lance Stroll in the race. Albon in 18th, Kevin Magnussen in 19th, and Logan Sargent at his home race was the only driver to DNF in the Grand Prix on Sunday. Kevin Magnussen really had the elbows out, and we know how hard Kevin Magnussen can race. We know that anyway. He always races really, really hard, and he gave it to Lewis Hamilton the weekend. Lewis Hamilton for once wasn't complaining. I think Lewis actually enjoyed it, but for the second time he's done that to help Nico Hülkenberg get some points for Haas. So I was kind of thinking, with all the bad races he's having and the bad results of not getting points, would he be out of the team next year? But then again, he's the ultimate team player as well, so he's been doing his bit. But when it came to the Logan Sargent incident, I think Kevin Magnussen was pretty in fault there. Probably should have held back for another corner or two. Probably would have caught Sargent. Not much Logan Sargent could do. To be honest, really, I don't think he would have seen Kevin Magnussen coming up the inside of him. There wasn't really much room to give him any room. So bitterly disappointed weekend. Williams totally off the pace this weekend, with Albon in 18th and Sargent in 20th, and you kind of hope that Alex Albon would be the kind of driver to have a good weekend this weekend, and he didn't. And the Williams car is proving to be quite difficult. It's proving to be slow. A car that used to be fast in the straight, and even last season could pick up points at different times, but rough times ahead for Williams. And Logan Sargent, he's going to be very lucky if he's on the grid for 2025. So some tough times ahead for Williams, maybe focusing on next year or 2026. And also as well, have put in a bid for Adrian Newey. Where is Adrian Newey going to go? He'll be finishing with Red Bull early next year. Ferrari obviously is the main topic, the main speaking point. Everyone says he's going to go to Ferrari. Imagine him and Lewis Hamilton and Charles together. It is the dream, but maybe he wants to go do some boats. Maybe he wants to go cycling with Eddie Jordan. Maybe he wants to retire. Would he go back to Williams? Would Williams pay the kind of money Ferrari would? Would he like to bring back the Williams days rather than bring back the Ferrari days? It's a hard one, because I'm not quite sure that Adrian Newey is money driven, because I think the man is pretty much sorted. Look at the stats, look at the money. I say Red Bull have paid him. He's tried to leave before, and Red Bull have put this off for a long time, but I think finally the curtains are for Adrian Newey. And I would say if he's kind of looking to leave Red Bull, he's probably looking to leave Formula 1 or work on different projects. Like, the man's not young, he's definitely at retired age. So let's see where Adrian Newey goes. And it's been that year, hasn't it? Even before Formula 1 started, we've had people moving around, and then we had the old incident with Christian Horner, which is, a lot of people thought it had to do with what was going on at Red Bull, and maybe slightly, the powers and the struggles within Red Bull at the moment, and it was kind of the kicking point for him. But I think he was looking for an excuse and a way out of Red Bull. So we'll say farewell to Adrian Newey. But I don't think Red Bull are in trouble. I think Red Bull have a good team of people there. What they're missing is that engineer that will go, we could tweak this, or maybe we could move this into design. So I think that's where they'll miss them. I think they've got really great people in Red Bull, in Milton Keynes. They got some really great engineers that do work with him. It's not just Adrian Newey. It is a team, and it is a factory, and it's a group of people. But they will miss those little inputs from him, won't they? Those little things of, can we change this and can we change that? So we head to Imola. Unfortunately, we weren't there for the Grand Prix. Absolute disaster last year, and people lost their lives, and people got hurt, and people lost their homes, and the devastation with the floods and the rain that came down. Very disappointing not to have Imola, and we're lucky to have an Imola Grand Prix this year. But it'll show you what you can do when you put your minds together and everyone to get that city back. And it's a Grand Prix I love. It's an old school circuit, has been remodeled a small bit, but it tends to bring good races. I haven't looked at the weather. Who knows how the weather's going to be in Italy? You would presume at this time of year it will be sunny, but look at the disaster we had last year. So I think Max Verstappen will be favourites as usual, but I'm very interested to see how Lando Norris is going to go. How are these upgrades going to go? At a track like Imola, are they going to be very close? Could he make it a back-to-back? Lando Norris actually could have had back-to-back wins in Formula 1 before, couldn't he? The weekend in Russia, he could have won in, I think, was it Monza as well that Daniel Ricciardo won it, if I'm mistaken. Yeah, it was. Yeah, he could have won like 2 or 3 Grand Prix back to back. So McLaren have the history of winning, and Zach Brown with the high fives and the yeehaw. Very American, very excited. And did you see the post that they put up about Trump? About being, not political, and he was invited as a guest. Kind of hard to say no to Trump, even though I don't like Trump. I think if Trump came to the radio station, I'd probably tell him to come in and have a cup of tea and put him on the radio. But so maybe Trump needs to go to a few more races. The home race in Miami was an absolute brilliant show, and for once we had a great Formula 1 race. If we could have 5 or 6 or 7 of these across the year, every Grand Prix is not going to be a Hollywood blockbuster, is it? We're not going to get Grand Prix after Grand Prix. It's not the 2021 season, but we head to Imola. Fingers crossed we can see McLaren on the pace. Perez will be looking to bounce back. Ferrari will be looking to bounce back. Of course, one of Ferrari's home Grand Prix. They'll be looking for a great result in Imola. Don't count Ferrari out. They've been good there in the past as well. But Max looks relaxed. He knows he can't win everything, and I think he was just happy to see someone else that wasn't fighting for him in the championship to win the Grand Prix. But we could be seeing him very, very soon. And before we finish off, some more news in Formula 1 that Charles's engineer is going to be gone. He's going to have a new engineer from this weekend, so I think we're going to have a break from the I'll come back to you, I'm checking messages, unless it's a Ferrari thing and the new engineer is going to do that. But a new engineer, race engineer, coming in this weekend for next weekend for the race for Charles. That is all my Formula 1 news. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with more reaction from Imola on the Fitstop podcast. You enjoy your weekend, or whenever you're listening to this. Thank you so much for listening to Fitstop podcast. Imola is next. Lando Norris finally is a Formula 1 Grand Prix winner.